In this class, we've been studying personalities in the Bible. Today's class is going to be a bit different. Our church this week lost one of its Hall of Famers. So just for my class this week, instead of personalities in the Bible, I'm calling it personality at Brentview. Every church has a Hall of Famer. They're individuals who have served the congregation with distinction, with dedication, and certainly commitment. When they leave us, they're sorely missed. And many times they're overlooked, easily, quickly forgotten, but never replaced. Usually when I do a funeral talk, I will use an acrostic of their name. What that means is, I'll choose descriptive words that speak of their personality and kind of match it with the letter on their name. And that's what I'm going to do today. My Hall of Famer, his last name was Evans. His first name was David. And with each of those letters in Evans, I'll match a word telling his character and giving you a little insight into his personality. E, he was easygoing. V, he was a valiant man. A, everything about him was above board. N, David was a neighbor. And finally, S, he was his example of a servant. His whole life, he devoted himself to others. Well, I'm going to tell you about David Evans, and he's the Evans that I knew. Shakespeare, he kind of described him in these terms, and it comes out of his Merchant of Venice. The quality of a man is not strained. It droppeth as a gentle rain from heaven. And earthly power doth then show the likeness of God. In David, I saw the likeness of God, and I want to tell you about it. So let's begin. E, he was easygoing. That means he dealt with life in a rather relaxed manner. I was there when David was baptized. I watched him join this church. I saw him as a teller counting the Lord's money year after year. I watched how he loved his wife, Alita. They were married for 66 years. I saw him as a dad. They had 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. I was at his 90th birthday party, and I saw how his grandchildren just adored him. I watched him get cancer. I watched him die. I witnessed all the tears. Dave Evans was easygoing. He never lost his smile. He rarely showed his pain. And he always laid bare his heart. That's how you become easygoing. Jesus said something that really describes David. He said it in John 10, verse 10. Here are his words. I have come that you might have real life, eternal life. And that life is better than anything that you ever dreamed of. When David Evans found that, he then took on the behavior of a person who's easygoing. Another word that you Jewish listeners would understand if you're listening, and it's the word shalom. It means peace, and it gets its derivative from the person who's easygoing. When the Lord gives you real life, he teaches you to love your enemies. And if you're easygoing, you find that you have very few enemies. That was David Evans. Okay? That was the E. Now comes the V. Valiant, meaning courageous. David worked for Sears. It was the largest retail company in Canada. He was always on the job. He worked there for over 30 years. He was Mr. Fix-It. If anything went wrong in the store, or with any of the activities in the store or the building, it was David's job to put it back. And he did. And he did it very well. And he did it for a very long time. Never late. Loved and respected by all his fellow workers. The ever-faithful mediator, if there was a dispute. They never heard a bad word from his lips. Overtime was his watchword. He gave the company more than that company gave back. They were a very fortunate company to have David. His smile was contagious, had few enemies. That easygoing personality was infectious. His retirement was a textbook. His courage became the motto of the Sears advertisement. The customer is always right. Valiant means a man courageous. I don't think there ever was a man more valiant than the day that David told me that he got prostate cancer. He claimed Paul's words, I'm going to fight the fight. I'm going to finish this race. And I'm going to keep my faith. Because I know there's going to be a crown waiting for me. And I'm going to claim it. After chemo and radiation, that cancer went to his spine. David remained valiant. From the spine, the cancer entered into the bone. David remained valiant. From the bone, cancer lodged in his vital organs. Didn't stop David. David remained valiant. He didn't waver. The man never complained. He never lost his smile. He kept his faith. And with that, his wife Alida never left his side. She never let go of his hand. Together all those 66 years in marriage. And now crowned with the words, well done, faithful servant, valiant. That man had it. 3, above board. That's without dishonesty or concealment. The Bible has a wonderful illustration that Jesus tells a story of the prodigal son who took his father's inheritance after he had deceived his father into giving it to him. And he got it before his dad died. Well, that prodigal son went off and he blew it, the whole wad, in a far country. Wine, women, and song. Took every penny, lost every penny, and being penniless, he worked on a pig farm. And then he got an idea. I'm going to go back to my father's house and see if he'll receive me. Maybe he'll have me back. I'm going to go back and I'll just be a servant. I won't be his son anymore. But they live better than I live right now. I'll ask him if he'll forgive me. And I'll become simply one of his servants. Well, that's what he did. And guess what? The father was out at the gate, watching down the road to see if one day he would come home. And on that day, looking down the road and coming over the hill was guess who? His son, the prodigal. And he ran over to meet him. And when he met him, he not only forgave him, he was so above board with his treatment for his prodigal that he took off his filthy pig coveralls, and in its place he gave him a robe, beautiful robe. And then he put new sandals on his feet, and then he put a ring on his finger. Now, that new robe, it wasn't just any robe. Discovery class, God was above board with his son, who had betrayed him. His new robe was the same robe mentioned in Revelation 6, verse 11. The elaborate garment that we're all going to be wearing when we get to heaven. Well, it gets better. The ring on his finger. Do you know what that was? In our terms, it was his father's credit card. His father's wealth was now again at the disposal of his son. Robe, fit for heaven. A ring, unlimited credit. Is that above board? Oh, I think it is. That was David Evans. His character, his manner, was all of that. He was above board. And in my visits to the hospital, I used to tell David a joke. I often do that with many of my patients that are suffering in the hospital. Life can be really tough. Pain can be tough. Nobody coming to see you can be tough. Rejection can be even worse. So when I go in, I try to cheer them up and give them something to smile over. Well, here's one of the last ones I shared with David before he died. I told him there was a man went to see his doctor, and he was suffering from a shortness of breath. Well, the doctor examined him, and he did his blood pressure test. He got out his stethoscope, and he checked his heart. And then he looked in his ears, and then his eyes. And then he looked in his mouth. And then he sat back, and he looked at the man, and he says, "Oh, I think I know what it is." So he told him what it was. And this man burst into smiles and happiness. And the doctor didn't think he quite got it. He said, "Can you tell me now, what did I tell you?" And the man said, "Well, you told me that I need to have a hot mama. And if I do, that's going to really make me cheerful." "No, that's not what I said," the doctor said. "Well, what'd you tell me?" "I told you that you have a heart murmur and you need to be careful. That's what I told you." Well, David and I had a good laugh. And neighbor. It means to live nearby and be helpful with others. That's a neighbor. David and Alita, they lived here not far from our church, right over there in a subdivision. Same house, same address, same zip code, same phone number, same school for their 3 kids, same church with all our families, same backyard with all the parties. When the snow fell, the neighbors were there. When accidents and sickness came and befell the neighborhood, David and Alita were there. But when sickness came to the Evans house, it was payback time. And those same neighbors that they helped, they came back and helped them. Some of you are listening today. I'm here to tell you on behalf of the Evans family, thanks. You did that for them because they did it for you. That's a neighbor. I heard about a 5th grade school teacher. She was telling her class a lesson on being a good neighbor. And she came up with an idea. She thought, I'm going to stimulate these children to understand what a neighbor is really like. And here's what I'm going to do. She told her class, she said, "Class, I'm going to give you a sheet of paper, and on it are a number of old proverbs. And I'm going to let you read the proverb, and then I'm going to let you finish the proverb and tell me how it would apply to being a good neighbor. Well, she did the prep, and she handed out the paper. The kids sat down, and they began to fill out their exercise. Well, when that teacher got it back and she began to mark them, here's what she found out from the kids, what they thought was a neighbor. Here are the proverbs. Better to be safe than, the kid wrote, punch a fifth grader. Strike when the bug is close by. Don't bite the hand that looks dirty. Children should be seen and not spanked. Where there's smoke, there's pollution. A penny saved is not much. There's no fool like Uncle Dave. David was a neighbor, and he was a good one. You'd like to have had David as a neighbor. You'd like to have Alita as his partner, next door as a neighbor. They were a great team. Evans, finally the last word. It sums up all the others. I call it servant. The word servant means devoted to another. There's a new McDonald's near where I live. It's only 2 years old. Mary and I will walk down to that place. It's about a mile. And we usually pick up a latte and an ice cream together. Well, this past Wednesday, we walked over to that McDonald's store, and there was a pretty young teller who took the order. Young lady. And I said to her while she was taking the order, I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 17. What grade are you in? She said, I'm going into grade 12. And next year, what are you going to do? She said, I want to go to university. Then I said to her, do you have any brothers and sisters? Yes, she said. I'm the oldest of 4. My parents have 4 daughters. I'm the oldest daughter. And I said to her, how long have you lived in Cochrane? She said, we've been here 7 years. And we come from Syria. We're a family of refugees. Well, I said, you have beautiful English. Where did you learn your English? She said, there was a lady at our church that sat down and she taught us girls and mom and dad how to speak English. Well, I said she did a beautiful job because your English is better than mine. And then I said to her, what does your dad do? She said, my dad works over at the church. He's a janitor. And he doesn't make a lot, but he's been the janitor since we've come because that church sponsored our coming into this country. And the money that I make here at McDonald's, I help support the rest of the family. What's your dad's name? She said, Joseph. Well, I said, that's easy for me to remember because my wife is Mary and Joseph? Yeah, I'll remember that. Well, anyway, we had our latte and we had our ice cream. And then I got an idea because I was going to work the next day. It was a Thursday this week. And I went by the church where this man works. And I went by for a purpose. So I went in the door, and there was a priest standing inside at St. Mary's Catholic. And I asked him, I said, do you have a janitor by the name of Joseph? Yes. I said, would he be here today? Yes, he's right out there in the auditorium. He's there in the middle of the building. Just go and find him. So I went into the auditorium, and there he was, and he was looking after the benches, and he was cleaning the floor. And I walked over to him. He's a tall man and very shy, very broken English. English not as good as his daughter. And I said, are you Joseph? Yes. And I said, Joseph, you don't know me, but my name is Ron. And last night, my wife and we went over to McDonald's, and your daughter, she was the teller. She took my order. Oh. And I said, we talked about you coming to this country with your family, and you were an immigrant from Syria. And I've come to say thanks. First of all, to come to our country, because you're a wonderful addition to our nation. But more than that, I came to thank you as a father for the great job you did in raising that young lady. Well, he started to cry. And he said, nobody's ever told me that I was a good dad. And nobody ever told me that this is my lot in life. And I want to thank you for coming and meeting me. That man walked me to the door. Now, David Evans, he entered the gates of heaven this week, and he was greeted by a host of angels and his risen Lord. And the Lord's voice spoke to him, and he said, David, well done, good and faithful servant. Inasmuch as you have done all of this for these, the least of my little ones, you did it for me. I have something for you. Come. It's already fitted. It's a crown. And I'm going to put it on your head, and I want you to wear it proudly. I watched a man named Joseph bring over his immigrants, raise them here in this city, and the man did a great job as a dad. I watched David Evans come into this church and start as just a humble servant. And then suddenly he just rose, and he brought all of us with him. And little did I know that I was going to have in my midst all those years back one of Brentview's greatest Hall of Famers. Well, that's what we came to do today. I wanted you to meet somebody other than a personality in the Bible. I want you to meet somebody that I know that you're going to know now. You know now. Evans. Easygoing, valiant, a man above board, great neighbor, and above all, he became a wonderful servant. Well, you can do that. Wherever you start in life, you can do that. Those of you that are dads, be like that Joseph and keep up your good work. If you're an Alita, stand by your husband. If he gets sick, hold his hand. When he says goodbye, you be the one that hears it. And give him a kiss as he leaves. That's the story of David Evans. Next week when you come back, I'll give you another story out of the book, because we've been studying personalities in the Bible. Next week I'll have another one for you. Please come back. Can't wait to see you.